Hello students, today we are going to do the adventures of an understudy by Sir Anthony Hawkins, better known as Anthony Hope. This story has been adapted into films English, Hindi and Bengali. The Bollywood film Prem Ratan Dhan Payo, made in 2015, was also one whose plot was inspired by The Prisoner of Zenda. And the story, what you're going to read, is an excerpt from Prisoner of Zinda. Anthony Hope was an English novelist and playwright. He was a prolific writer, especially of adventure novels, but he is remembered predominantly for only two books, The Prisoner of Zenda and its sequel, Rupert of Henzo. Before we start the chapter, let us understand what is the meaning of the topic of this chapter. The adventures of an understudy. Who is an understudy, children? An understudy is an actor who takes on a particular role in a play if the usual actor is absent. So there always is a standby, whenever there is a play. So there is a standby in case the real actor is not able to perform the action. So the other player is there to take his place. So that is an understudy. Let us start with the chapter. Rasindale is travelling from England to Ruritania to see the coronation of King Rudolph. Now, what is a coronation? Coronation is a ceremony at which someone is officially crowned king or queen. So, it is the coronation of King Rudolph. A chance meeting in the woods is the forest, brings Rasindale and Rudolph face to face. Now, who are these two? They resemble each other a lot. They are just alike, okay? And King Rudolph resembles Rasindale. And they discovered that they look exactly alike. They're exactly the same. Even their hair is the same shade of brilliant red. So the color of their hair is also the same. The color of Rudolph's royal Elfberg family. The next day, Rudolph is found unconscious and unable to attend his coronation. So the king is unconscious and he is not able to attend his coronation where he was going to be crowned the king. But the show must go on, or else the king's half-brother and enemy, Black Michael, the Duke of Strelsa, will take over the throne. So, if he doesn't go there, then his half-brother will take over the throne. For the sake of Ruritania, Rasindale must pretend to be Rudolph. So, Rasindale has to take Rudolph's place, okay, to save the place, that is Ruritania, for the day and take part in the coronation. The king's friend Colonel Sapt and Fritz von Taroline promised to help. So they both promise that they will take care of Rasindale and they will help him to pretend like King Rudolph. But will Rasindale manage to deceive Black Michael and Princess Flavia, the woman who Rudolph is engaged to marry? So Prince Flavia is the one whom King Rudolph is going to marry. Read on to find out. The game had begun. Now, which game is being talked about? Rasindale is to pretend to be Rudolph at his coronation, since Rudolph is unable to attend it. So that is the game they are talking about here. The cool morning air streaming in through the window of the train cleared my head, and I was able to take in all Sapt said to me. Now what Sapt is doing? He is the one who takes care of the king. He's king's friend, Colonel Sapt. So he's telling Rasindale how he's supposed to behave, okay? He was wonderful. Here he is referred to Sapt, Colonel Sapt. He began at once to instruct me in the history of my past life, of my family and my tastes, pursuits, weaknesses, friends, companions, and servants. So everything was being told to Rasandale so that he behaves the way the king used to behave. He told me the etiquette of the Ruritanian court and promised to be constantly at my elbow to point out everybody whom I ought to know. Now here, so he was telling, Colonel Sapp was telling him how he is supposed to, behave. What are the formal rules? Etiquettes are the formal rules for polite behavior at the court, at the Ruritanian court, and promised to be constantly at my elbow. At my elbow is just right next to him, okay, at a hand's length, to point out everybody whom I ought to know. So he is going to point out and he is going to tell him who is who, so they will face no problem. At 9:30, looking out of the window, I saw the towers of a great city. Your capital, my liege, grimmed, old sapped with a wave of his hand. So he's telling Rasandale, Sapt is telling Rasandale that it is your capital. Liege is, what is the meaning of liege? Respectful manner of addressing the Lord that he served and obeyed there. Now, Sapt is actually jokingly calling Rasandale his liege. Your capital, my liege, grinned old Sapt with a wave of his hand. Leaning forward, he laid his finger on my pulse. So what is Sapt doing? He's sensing his pulse. Whose pulse? He's sensing Rasandale's pulse. Okay. A little too quick. And what does he find out? That it is too quick. When is it your pulse is beating too quick, children? When you are in tension, when you are in a hurry. Okay. So he is nervous, obviously nervous. That's the reason his pulse is beating too quick, said he in his grumbling tone. So he means that Rasandale is not sufficiently relaxed. Okay. I'm not made of stone, I exclaimed. Now, when he says I'm not made of stone, he means that he too have feelings. He too gets tensed. Okay, so this line tells you that Rasandale was actually tensed. You will do, said he with a nod. Then he paused and looking at us said quietly, God send we may be alive tonight. Now, God send, what does God send means? It means it is a prayer to God for wishing for something desired. He is praying that we should be alive tonight. And who is we referred to here? It is Rasandale and Rudolph. Okay, they are praying to God. This means they are tensed as they rely on God's help. Okay, Amen, said Fritz. The train stopped. Fritz and Sapt leaped out and held the door for me. Now, why are they holding the door for him? To show respect, because he's acting like a king now. So they have to show him respect. I choked down a lump that rose in my throat. Like when you're very tensed up and you're feeling very, tense. So that time you have a lump in your throat and you have to swallow it down. It's difficult to swallow it down. Then I settled my helmet firmly on my head and breathed a short prayer to God. So he's seeking God's, guidance. So he's praying to God again now. The last thing I did was to feel if my revolver was handing and my sword loose and in the scabbard. Now, what is a scabbard? Scabbard is a metal or leather cover for the blade of a sword. Then I stepped onto the platform of the station at Stelzer. So what he did, he got down onto the station. The bells throughout the city broke out into a joyful peal. So there was joy in the air in the city. There were bells ringing. The sound of a military band and of men cheering struck my ear. King Rudolph V was in his good city of Strelsa, and they shouted out, God save the king. So they were very happy that their king have come. Okay, so they are shouting. All Sap's mouth wrinkled into a smile. God save them both. So here both again is referred to whom? Rudolph and Rassendyll. He whispered, "Courage, lad," and I felt his hand press my arm. So what did old Sap do? He was trying to, support Rassendyll, that everything is going to be fine. Have courage. Okay. A group of officers stood awaiting me. So there are a group of officers who are waiting for the king, to welcome the king. At their head was a tall old man covered with medals and in a military uniform. Marshal Strakins whispered Sapt, and I knew that I was in the presence of the most famous veteran of the Rotarian army. So who's a veteran, children? Someone who has had long experience in the army and is in a very high and respected position. The marshal saluted me in a few loyal words. I accepted his greeting very suavely. What does suavely means? In a way that is confident and elegant, but not sincere. And received the compliments of a large number of distinguished guests. So there were many guests and they complimented the king. No one revealed the least suspicion. So nobody suspected Rassendyll. So I felt my nerve returning and the troubled beating of my heart subsiding. Now, what do you mean by I felt my nerve returning? It means I found myself becoming more confident and courageous. And what does subsiding means? It means becoming slower. Why does this happen? Because he's getting self-confidence now, because nobody is able to recognize him. Presently, I mounted my horse and started to ride through the streets with the marshal on my right and Sapt on my left. So in the middle, Rassendyll is riding, and on one side Sapt is there, on the other side Marshal is there. The scene was brilliant as we rode slowly to where the royal palace stood. So they were riding on the horses till the palace from the station. Every house was hung with red and decorated with flags. Now, why do you think it is hung with red? There is something red color in it. The reason is that's the color of the Elfberg family. That's the royal family to which King Rudolph belongs. The streets were lined and raised seats on each side. There were seats on each sides. I passed along, bowing this way and that under a shower of cheers, blessings and waving handkerchiefs. So there were people standing on both the sides and they were cheering, blessing and waving handkerchiefs. The balconies were full of brightly dressed ladies who clapped their hands and courtesied. So there were ladies who were cheering him up. A torrent of red roses fell on me. So there were lots red roses that they were being showered on the king. One bloom lodged in my horse's mane. So that is the hair on the horse's head. That's the horse's mane. And I took it and stuck it in my coat. So what did the king do? He took the the one of the roses that fell on horse's mane. He took it and he put it on his coat. Okay, that is the lapel. To acknowledge the applauding crowd, because red was the color of the royal Elfberg family. The marshal smiled grimly. "The red rose for the Elfberg marshal," said I gaily, and he nodded. Gaily, he said it cheerfully, that it is our color. So that's the reason I'm putting it. I have written gaily, and a strange word it must seem. Now gaily here means cheerfully. So he's saying he was very excited. He was so excited that he almost believed he was really the king. But the truth is that I was giddy with excitement. Now what does he mean by this? He was confident and comfortable in his own role. He wanted to break down their resentment against Rudolph and make them accept him as their king. Here he's not acting as Rudolph as per the instructions that were given to him. by Sapt. He's being his own self, going beyond the rules to act as Rudolph might have done. Well, we went by, and then the marshal, turning round in his saddle, waved his hand. The soldiers closed round us so that the crowd could not come near me. So, what is happening here now? They are entering an area which belongs to the people who like Michael, Black Michael more. Okay, and so he feels, the marshal feels that people should be, kept away from Rassendale, as those people were more dedicated towards Black Michael. The soldiers closed us round us so that the crowd could not come near me. We were leaving my quarter of the city and entering Duke Michael's. So now, at present, in which part of the city they are, that belongs to the people who are dedicated to Michael, and they did not actually like the king Rudolph. Here, Black Michael of Strelitz was a hope, a hero, and a darling. So they worshipped Black Michael more. They thought he was the hero, and they did not like the king Rudolph. This action of Marshall's showed me more clearly than words what the state of feeling in the town must be. So he understood exactly what everybody is feeling in the town. That there are two parts in the town. Two parts, the town has been divided into two parts. In one is those who like Rudolph, the King Rudolph, and one is those who like the Duke Black Michael. But if fate made me a king, the least I could do was to play the part handsomely. Now, what do you mean by handsomely here? It means perfectly. So he wanted to play his part perfectly. He's saying it's fate. It is the fate that has made me a king. So he wants to play his part in a perfect manner. Why this change in our order, Marshal? Said I. So he asked, why has this order changed? Why have you placed more, horsemen around me? So he says, what does the marshal says? It's more prudent, sir, he murmured. Now, prudent here means sensible and careful, trying to avoid unnecessary risks. Here the king was in danger in marshal's quarter of the city, and the marshal wanted to be careful by giving the king's greater protection. I stopped the horse. Let those in front ride on, said I, till they are 50 yards ahead. So what does he say? The horsemen who are there right in front of him, they should march ahead, and they should be 50 yards ahead of them. And you, Colonel Sapt, and my friends, wait here till I ride 50 yards. So he says, you both wait here. He says the colonel and his friends to wait there till he rides 50 yards ahead of them. And see that no one is nearer to me. So he doesn't want anyone around him. Even in that area where people are dedicated to his brother, half brother, Black Michael. So he wants to go there alone. I will have my people see that their king trusts them. So that is the message he wants to pass on to the people, that I really trust you. Okay. Sapt laid his hand on my arm. I shook him off. The marshal hesitated. Now here Sapt laid his hand on his arms. Whose arm? Rassendale's arm. Why does he do this? To tell him that what he is doing is not correct. I shook him off, but Rassendale doesn't want to listen. The marshal hesitated. He's hesitating because he's putting everyone into danger. Am I understood? Said I, and the marshal gave the orders. So he was saying it in public. So he had to be obeyed because he was acting like a king. I saw old Sapt smiling into his beard, but he shook his head at me. So he saw that Sapt understood. He was old and he understood what exactly Rassendale was doing. If I had been killed in open day in the streets of Strelitz, Sap's position would have been a difficult one. In open day means during the day in front of everyone. Then obviously Sap's position must have been very, he would have been in a very bad position, because if he is going to get killed, then how could they, take the real Rudolph out? Okay. So I, riding alone, entered this barely decorated part of town. It was more interesting, for I heard the comments of the crowd. Now everybody was talking. How can he go alone? Now this is adding excitement and tension also, because Rassendale is exposing not only himself but the whole group to danger by taking charge of the situation here. If he's red, he's right, cried an old woman. Now here, this, if he's red, he's right. It is a famous saying in Ruritania, referring to the red colored hair of all members of the royal family. So that is what they're saying is, if they are red, they are right, they are perfect, they are from the royal family. I laughed and took off my helmet. So what did he do? Rassendale, he took out his helmet to show what color hair he has got, so that she might see that I was the right color, and the crowd cheered me at that. So he took crowd into his confidence. He looks paler than usual, said one. So one of them said that he's looking very pale. He's bigger than I thought, said another. So everybody is expressing themselves about their king. So he had a good jaw under that beard after all. So they are talking about his jawline also, commented a third. The pictures of him aren't handsome enough, declared a pretty girl. So what did she mean? He looks better in person than the pictures. But in spite of these signs of approval and interest, the mass of people received me in silence and with sullen looks. Now what does with sullen looks means? With silence and anger, because they supported Michael and not Rudolph. So in their hearts of hearts, they still supported Black Michael. At last we were at the church, and for the first time the sudden sense of my audacity almost overcame me. Now what does sudden sense of my audacity almost overcame me means? It means he suddenly realized what a huge risk he had taken, and fear overtook all other feelings in his mind. Now he was overwhelmed by his recklessness in going beyond his role and risking everyone's life. Okay, everything was in a mist to Rassendale. Everything looked very blurry and unclear because he was very nervous. As I dismounted is getting down from the horse, I saw the marshal and sat dimly means without paying too much attention, because he was now getting nervous, because he realized what he had actually done. Okay, and dimly the group of gorgeously robed priests. So priests were wearing robes are long dresses, who awaited me, and my eyes were still dim as I walked up the aisle. So he's going up the aisle for his coronation. I saw nothing of the crowd that filled the church. So he did not see anyone who was there in the church properly. Why? Because he was so nervous at this point of time. Only two faces stood out side by side clearly before my eyes. A face of a girl, pale and lovely. Now who is this? It is his fiancée, Princess Flavia. Okay. And the face of a man whose red cheeks, black hair and dark eyes told me that at last I was in the presence of my brother Black Michael. So he could just see only two people's face, that is Black Michael and his fiancée Princess Flavia. And when he saw me, his red cheeks went pale all in a moment, and his helmet fell with a clatter on the floor. Black Michael went pale and dropped his helmet because he was shocked to see that his stepbrother had indeed come to be crowned as a king. He did not expect his brother to come there for the coronation ceremony. He must have done something wrong. That's the reason he was surprised now. Till that moment, he had not realized that the king had indeed come to Strelso. So he has realized at that moment only when he saw the king face to face. Of what followed next, I remember nothing. I knelt before the priest as he anointed my head. Anointed means put oil as part of a ceremony. Then I rose to my feet, took from him the crown of Ruritania and set it on my head. I swore the old oath of the king. Now this is the ceremony going on. He's being crowned as the king. Then the lady with the pale face stepped from her place and came to where I stood. Now this is Princess Flavia. And an attendant cried, Her Royal Highness, the Princess Flavia. Flavia put her hand in mine and courtesied low, and then came the Duke of Strelso. Now, courtesize means a formal gesture of greeting and respect made by women in which the knees are bent, the head slightly bowed, and the skirt held outwards. Okay. Now here, who came next after Princess Flavia? The Duke of Strelso. His step trembled, I swear, and he looked to the right and to the left as a man looks who thinks on flight. What do you mean by who thinks on flight? Who looks like he wants to run away so that he does not have to deal with some unpleasantness. So that is what exactly the Duke of Strelso, who's Duke of Strelso? Black Michael is thinking. Okay, his face was patched with red and white. His hand shook, so he was shivering, and his face also was very dull. It was very pale, and I felt his lips dry and parched as he kissed my hand. So that's a gesture that you have to kiss the king's hand. So Black Michael kissed Rassendel's hand. So he could feel that his lips have gone dry. Resolutely doing my duty, I took my dear Michael by both hands, and now here resolutely means in a very determined way. Kissed him on the cheek. I think we were both glad when that was over. Now here Black Michael was uncomfortable with the situation. He was pale and trembling, and his lips were parched. That means dry. Perhaps he did not expect to see his stepbrother present himself at the coronation. Hale and hearty, Rassendale as Rudolph was more composed and hugged his stepbrother dutifully, kissing him, but both were relieved when the formalities were over. But neither in the face of Princess nor anyone else did I see the least doubting or questioning. So nobody had a doubt, nobody was questioning. But neither she nor anyone else dreamed or imagined that I could be other than the king. So for an hour I stood there as though I had been a king all my life. Now he was thinking, that he has been king all his life. Everybody kissed my hand and the ambassadors paid me their respect. So he was standing there and he felt like a real king. Then back we went through the streets to the palace. I was in a carriage now, side by side with the Princess Flavia. She turned to me. Do you know, Rudolph, said she, you look somehow different today. So that means she has not understood that, he's someone else. The fact was not surprising, but the remark was disquieting. Disquieting means causing fear and worry. I said what was perfectly true. My dear princess, it must be because nothing in my life has affected me more than the reception I have been greeted with today. So he just gave an answer. He tried to mislead her that, the reception that he has received today from others, that's the reason he is looking very different today. That has really affected him. He smiled brightly, but in an instant grew grave and whispered, "Did you notice Michael?" So now the princess says, "Did you notice Michael?" "Yes," said I, adding, "He wasn't enjoying himself." So he says even he had noticed, that is, Rassendale had noticed that Black Michael was not enjoying himself. "Do be careful," she went on. "You don't indeed. You don't keep enough watch on him, you know." Now she's trying to convey a message to Rudolph, that is the king, okay, that he is not a good person. "I know," said I, "that he wants what I have got." So he said the truth. Now he says that is what Black Michael wants, what he has got. And what is it he has got? He is crowned as the king. Bang, bang, blare, blare. We were at the palace. Now those are the voice of drums being beaten. Okay. Guns were firing and trumpets blowing. Rows of attendants stood waiting. So the guns were being fired, okay, and trumpets were blowing. Rows of attendants stood waiting. There were people, attendants, waiting for them. I handed the princess up the broad marble staircase, so she was going forward. Then I took formal possession as a crowned king of the royal palace and wondered what the king of Ruritania was doing. So he is wondering, he's taking over the palace and he's wondering at that point of time what is the actual king doing. The excitement heats up as Black Michael kidnaps the real king, and Rassendale is forced to keep up the pretense for longer than he expected to. So he was expected to keep pretending to be the king only until the time he was crowned king. But since the real king had been taken away by the kidnapped by his own brother Black Michael, so he had to, Rassendale had to pretend to be the real king. The story of how he rescues Rudolph and saves the throne of Ruritania from Michael's form the story of the prisoner of Zinda. So that is what is there in Prisoner of Zinda. If you really like the story, you can buy the book and you can read it. I feel this story is very interesting. An excerpt from the Prisoner of Zinda by Anthony Hope. Thank you for watching. Hope you have understood. If you have understood, like my video and subscribe to my channel for my latest updates.